Big Claus and Little Claus by Hans Christian Andersen.
Two men lived in a village, and they had the same name. Each was called Claus. But one had 4 horses, and the other only a single horse. To distinguish them from each other, folks called the one who had 4 horses Big Claus, and the one who had only a single horse Little Claus. The whole week through, Little Claus had to plough for Big Claus and to lend him his 1 horse. Then Big Claus helped him out with all his 4, but only once a week, and that on a holiday. Hurrah! How Little Claus cracked his whip over all 5 horses, for they were as good as his own on that one day. The sun shone gaily, and all the bells in the steeples were ringing. The people were all dressed in their best and were going to church with their hymn books under their arms. They saw Little Claus ploughing with 5 horses. He was so merry that he cracked his whip again and again and cried,
"Giddy up, all my 5 horses!"
You mustn't talk that way, for only one of the horses is yours,
said Big Claus. Soon Little Claus forgot that he was not to say this.
"Giddy up, all my horses!"
If you say that again, I'll hit your horse on the head and it'll fall down dead.
Oh, I certainly won't say that again.
But when people came by again and nodded good day to him,
"Giddy up, all my 5 horses!"
I'll giddy up all your horses.
and Little Claus's horse fell down dead.
Oh, now I haven't got a horse at all.
Then he flayed the horse and let the hide dry in the wind. He put it in a sack and hung it over his shoulder and went to the town to sell his horse's skin. He had a very long way to go and was obliged to pass through a big dark wood, and the weather got really bad. He was lost. And before he could find the right way again, it was evening, and it was too far to get home again or even to the town before nightfall. Close by the road stood a large farmhouse. The shutters were closed outside the windows, but the light could still be seen shining through them.
I may be able to stop here for the night.
The farmer's wife opened the door. But when she heard what he wanted,
My husband's not at home, so I'm not taking anybody in.
Then I'll have to sleep outside.
close by was a big haystack, and between this and the farmhouse stood a small thatched house.
I can find the roof. That's a perfect bed. I hope the stork won't fly down and bite my legs.
For a stork was in fact standing on the roof near his nest. Little Claus climbed up to the roof of the shed where he lay and turned round to settle himself comfortably. The wooden shutters didn't cover the windows at the top, and he could look straight into the room. There was a huge table with a cloth laid, and wine, and roast meat, and a glorious fish upon it. The farmer's wife and the clerk were seated at table, and nobody besides. She was filling his glass, and he was digging his fork into the fish, for that was his favourite dish. Little Claus stretched his head towards the window and saw a glorious cake.
Oh, if only I could get some of that.
Now he heard someone riding along the high road. It was the woman's husband coming home. He was a good man, but he had the strange peculiarity. He could never bear to see a clerk. If a clerk appeared before his eyes, he went quite mad. And that was why the clerk had gone to the wife to wish her good day, because he knew that her husband was not at home. But when they heard the man coming, they were frightened, and the woman begged the clerk to creep into a big empty chest which stood there. And he did so, for he knew the husband couldn't bear the sight of a clerk. The woman quickly hid all the excellent meat and wine in her oven. If the man had seen that, he would have been certain to ask what it meant. And now little Claus saw all that good food put away.
Is anyone up there? Huh? Who are you lying there? Better come inside with me, huh?
And little Claus told him how he'd lost his way and asked permission to stay there for the night.
Yes, certainly, but first we must have something to eat, huh?
The woman received them both in a very friendly way, spread the cloth on a long table, and gave them a dish of porridge. The farmer was hungry and ate with a good appetite, but little Claus couldn't help thinking of the fine roast meat, fish, and cake which he knew were in the oven. Under the table at his feet he'd laid the sack with the horse's hide in it, for as we know, he'd come out to sell it in the town. He couldn't stand the porridge, so he trod upon the sack. The dry skin inside crackled quite loudly.
Why, what have you got in your sack?
That's a magician. He says we're not to eat porridge, for he has filled the oven with roast meat, fish, and cake.
Wonderful,
cried the farmer. And he opened the oven in a hurry and found all the dainty provisions which his wife had hidden there, but which, as he thought, a wizard had conjured forth. The woman didn't dare say anything, but put the things at once on the table. And so they both ate of the meat, the fish, and the cake. Now little Claus again trod on his sack and made the hide creak.
What's he saying now?
He says that he's conjured up some wine for us also, and that the bottles are standing in the corner behind the oven.
And now the woman was obliged to bring out the wine which she had hidden. And the farmer drank it and became very merry. He would have been very glad to see such a conjurer as little Claus had there in the sack.
Can he conjure up the devil? I should like to see him.
Oh, yes. My conjurer can do anything I ask of him. He says, yes, but that the devil is very ugly to look at, and we'd better not see him.
I'm not afraid. will he look like?
Why, he'll look the very image of a clock.
Ugh! That is ugly. I can't bear the sight of a clock. Still, it won't matter. I know he is really a devil, so I can stand it. But he mustn't come too near me.
I'll ask my conjurer.
What does he say?
He says you may go and open the chest that stands in the corner, and you'll see the devil crouching in it. But you must hold the lid so that he doesn't slip out.
Will you help me hold it?
And he went to the chest where the wife had hidden the real clock, who sat in there and was very much afraid.
God, I saw him, and he looked exactly like our clock. Oh, dreadful!
And they sat and drank until late into the night.
You must sell me that conjurer. Ask as much as you like for him. I'll give you a whole sack of money, huh?
That I can't do. Think how much use I can make of him.
Oh, please, I should very much like to have him. Please.
Well, as you've been kind enough to give me shelter and food, you may have my conjurer for a sack of money. A full one.
That you shall have, but you must take that chest away with you. I won't have it in my house.
Little Klaus gave the farmer his sack with the dry hide in it, and got in exchange a whole sack of money, filled to the top. The farmer also gave him a big cart in which to carry off his money and chest. On the other side of the wood was a great deep river. The water rushed along so rapidly that one could scarcely go against the stream. A fine new bridge had been built over it. Little Klaus stopped on the centre of the bridge and said quite loudly, so that the clerk could hear it,
What shall I do with this stupid chest? It's as heavy as if stones were in it. I shall only get tired if I drag it any further, so I'll throw it into the river. And if it comes back to me, well, good. And if it does not, no great loss.
and he took the chest with one hand and lifted it up a little, as if he intended to throw it into the river.
No, let me out first. I'll give you a whole sack of money if you let me go.
Well, that's different.
And he opened the chest. The clerk crept quickly out, pushed the empty chest into the water, and they went to his house where little Klaus received a whole sack of money. He had already received one from the farmer, and so now he had his cart loaded with money. He got home to his room and emptied all the money into a heap in the middle of the floor.
I've been well paid for my horse. It will really upset Big Claus when he hears how rich I've grown. All because of one horse.
So he sent a boy to Big Klaus to ask for a measure. Big Klaus wondered what he wanted it for. And he smeared some tar underneath the measure so that a part of whatever was measured should stick to it. And so it happened. For when he received the measure back, there were 3 new 8-shilling pieces stuck to it. And he ran off at once to little Klaus.
did you get all that money from?
Oh, that's my horse skin. I sold it yesterday evening.
That's money for jam.
And he ran home in a hurry, took an axe and killed all his 4 horses. Then he flayed them and carried off the skins to the town.
Hides, who'll buy my hides?
All the shoemakers and tanners came running and asked how much he wanted for them.
A sack of money for each. Little Claus will pay for this. I'll kill him for it.
Now, little Klaus's old grandmother had died. She'd been very harsh and unkind to him. But he was very sorry, and took the dead woman and laid her in his warm bed to see if she might come to life again. There he intended her to remain all through the night, and he himself would sit in the corner and sleep on a chair, as he had often done before. As he sat there, in the night, the door opened, and big Klaus came in with his axe. He knew where little Klaus's bed stood, and going straight up to it, thinking she was little Klaus, he hit the old grandmother on the head.
You won't make a fool of me anymore.
He's a bad fellow, that man. He actually wanted to kill me. It's a good thing for my old grandmother that she was dead already.
He dressed his grandmother in her Sunday clothes, borrowed a horse from his neighbour, harnessed it to a carriage, and put the old lady on the back seat, so that she couldn't fall out when he drove. And so they trundled through the wood. When the sun rose, they were in front of an inn. There little Klaus pulled up and went in to have some refreshment. The host had a lot of money. He was also a very good man, but exceedingly hot, as if he had pepper and tobacco in him.
Good morning. You put on your Sunday clothes early today?
Yes, I'm going out to town with my old grandmother.
Yeah.
She's out there. Would you take her a glass of wine? But you must speak very loudly, for she can't hear well.
Yes, that I'll do, yes. Here's a glass of wine from your grandson. Hello?
Once more he called out the same thing, but as she persisted in not hearing him, he grew angry and threw the glass in her face so that the wine ran down over her nose, and she tumbled backwards into the carriage. For she had only been sat upright, not bound fast.
Just a moment. You've killed my grandmother. There's a big hole in her forehead.
Oh. It's my hot temper. I can't control it. Oh, dear. Oh, dear. Little Klaus. I'll give you a sack of money. A whole sack of money. And have your grandmother buried as if she were my own. No, don't say anything. Or I'll I'll have my head cut off. And that would be very disagreeable.
So little Klaus again received a whole sack of money. And the host buried the old grandmother as if she had been his own. And when little Klaus came home with all his money, he immediately sent his boy to Big Klaus to ask to borrow a bushel measure.
What? 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 Didn't I kill him? I must see this with my own eyes.
And he went over to little Klaus's house with the measure.
Where did you get all that money?
You killed my grandmother, not me, and I sold her and got a whole sack of money for her.
That's money for old rope.
And he rushed home, took an axe and killed his own grandmother. Then he put her on a carriage and drove off to the town with her to where the chemist lived and asked him if he would buy a dead person.
Who is it? Where did you get him from?
It's my grandmother. I killed her so I can get a sack of money for her.
Heaven help me. You're raving. You'll get your head chopped off.
Huh?
This is terrible. This is awful. You'll be punished.
And Big Klaus was so frightened that he jumped straight into his carriage, whipped the horses and drove home.
You shall pay for this, little Klaus. You shall pay.
When he got home, he took the biggest sack he could find and sped over to little Klaus's house.
You tricked me again. First, I killed my horses, and then my old grandmother. It's all your doing. But you shall never trick me again. For now, I shall drown you.
And he thrust little Klaus into his sack and was off. It was a long way that he had to go before he came to the river, and little Klaus was not too light to carry. The road led him close to a church. The organ was playing and the people were singing so beautifully. Big Klaus put down his sack with little Klaus in it, close to the church door, and thought it would be a very good thing to go in and hear a psalm before he went further. For little Klaus couldn't get out, and all the people were in church. So he went in. Little Klaus in the sack turned and twisted, but he found it impossible to loosen the cord. An old drover with snow-white hair and a great staff in his hand passed by. He was driving a whole herd of cows and oxen before him, and they stumbled against the sack in which little Klaus was imprisoned, so that it was knocked over.
Oh dear, I'm so young and yet I'm going to heaven so soon.
And I, my poor fellow, am so old and can't get there yet.
Well, untie the sack and get into it in my place, and you'll get to heaven right away.
With all my heart. But will you look after my cattle?
Little Klaus replied that of course he would. And he retied the sack and went his way with all the cows and oxen. Soon afterwards, Big Klaus came out of the church. He took the sack on his shoulders again, although it seemed to him as if the sack had become lighter, for the old drover was only half as heavy as Little Klaus. So he went to the river, which was deep and broad, threw the sack with the old drover in it into the water, and called after him, thinking that it was Little Klaus.
Now, you won't trick me any more.
Then he went home. But when he came to a place where there were crossroads, he saw Little Klaus driving all his beasts.
What's this? Didn't I drown you?
Yes, you did. You threw me into the river less than an hour ago.
But wherever did you get all these fine beasts?
These beasts are sea cattle.
Yeah.
You see, as soon as I sank to the bottom in the sack,
Yes.
it was opened, and the loveless sea maiden took me by the hand and offered me a herd of cattle and oxen. And we walked together in the freshest grass, there below amongst the loveliest flowers, and the fish flew past our heads. It was beautiful, truly beautiful.
But why did you come up again? I shouldn't have done that if it was so marvellous down there. But never mind. You really are a lucky man. Do you think I should get some sea cattle, too, if I went down to the bottom of the river?
Yes, I think so, but I can't carry you in the sack all the way to the river. You're far too heavy. However, if you go there and creep into the sack yourself, I'll throw you into the river with great pleasure.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. But if I don't get any sea cattle when I'm down there, I shall come up and beat you. Be warned.
And so they went together to the river, driving the beasts before them. When the thirsty animals saw the water, they ran as fast as they could to get to it.
See how they hurry. They're longing to get back to the bottom.
Yes, but you must help me first, or you'll get a beating.
And he crept into the sack which Little Klaus had ready for him.
Better put a stone in it so that I shall sink.
And Little Klaus obligingly put a large stone into the sack, tied it tightly, and pushed it in. It sank immediately to the bottom.